weeks, Senator Harry Reid has actually came out swinging against the Koch brothers. That's not something you see a lot. In a recent floor speech about the new Paul Ryan budget, Reid said it reflected the principles of the Koch brothers, and it would, of course, lower taxes on the rich, because that's essentially what they want. He said, quote, "Is $80 billion of personal wealth for the Koch brothers enough?" I think most people, most everyone would say yes, it's enough. But not the Koch brothers. They want more. They're the richest people in the world. Individually, they're only fifth. Put them together, and they're the richest in the world. I kind of like this, right? Harry Reid's coming out strong, even though he was wrong about the numbers. The Waltons are actually the richest family in the world when you put them all together. But hey, Harry Reid coming on strong. I love it. So where's a billionaire to go when a senator goes after him? Obviously, he goes to the Wall Street Journal. Now, Charles Koch recently wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, basically to whine about how he's being unfairly picked on by Senator Reid. Boo fucking who? What I have to say. He writes, "I've devoted most of my life to understanding the principles that enable people to improve their lives." Really? Unless, of course, you live in Minnesota. That has had 2 Koch pipelines burst, releasing hundreds of thousands of oil into small towns and into the environment. Or a Native American that has had their oil literally stolen from them by Koch Oil, a subsidiary of Koch Industries. Or how about being a resident of Corpus Christi, Texas, where the Koch brothers tried to cover up, or Koch Industries tried to cover up, a release of benzene from one of their refineries there. Benzene is, of course, a well-known carcinogen. But he goes on to malign government. He said, quote, "Unfortunately, the fundamental concepts of dignity, respect, equality before the law, and personal freedom are under attack by the government. That's why if we want to restore a free society and create greater well-being and opportunity for all Americans, we have no choice but to fight for those principles. I've been doing so for more than 50 years, primarily through educational efforts. It was only in the past decade that I realized the need to engage in the political process, such as buying our politicians. Look, the Koch brothers have been making political donations for longer than 10 years. From 1998 to 2003, Koch Industries spent about $2.6 million in lobbying. Charles gave around $54,000 to candidates for PACs before 2004. David Koch, his brother, between 1989 and 2003, gave $7 million. And remember, of course, they ran for political office as libertarians and got crushed. So, look, they've been at this a long time, a lot longer than 10 years. So, a lot of his article, I think, is straight-up propaganda. And it's pretty laughable how he can say things such as, quote, "The EPA has called Koch Industries a model for other companies. Was that before or after they were fined $500 million for environmental violations in 7 states? Or is it before or after all those spills from all of their different decaying pipelines? Or how about all the Koch funding to climate change denier groups?" I think this article is the biggest piece of trash I've read on the internet. Thoughts?
How about we let Sean go first so he can get his libertarian defense out of the way, and then we can all say things that make sense.
Well, I'm not going to defend much. Like, he wrote the op-ed. He did technically in his article say that he started donating in the past 10 years, and $50,000 before that isn't that much for him personally. But obviously his brother's been super active in politics for a lot longer. So I call that a 50-50 lie because it is his brother and technically not him. And he did run for president against Ronald Reagan, which, like, if you're a Republican and you love the Koch brothers, but you're also, like, in love with Ronald Reagan's ghost, you should probably think about. But yeah, like, to me, like, the op-ed was like, whatever. He's saying that he's just trying to explain why he's involved in politics, because his name is being brought up more and more by the opposition. Like, he and his brother, and I think there's a third or fourth Koch brother, I don't remember, like to donate money, but they like to keep their personal names out of the news. But after they got more and more into the news, they started donating more to like the arts and all that to try and buy off people who would criticize them. So like basically it's a response to Harry Reid specifically, and the fact that it's in the paper, it doesn't like that really doesn't bother me. Like if you write a response, then do whatever. If you want to make up whatever justification for you donating money to candidates, like that's up to you. Like I don't give a shit.
Yeah, okay, so actually decent points, Sean, for once in your life. No, I was going to say what Sean did. Like I'm not really comfortable with us. A lot of the argument here, if you take them as separate people, they're not the richest person in the world, but you put them together, they're the richest person in the world. That's kind of a nonsensical argument. Let their wealth stand on its own. They are filthy rich. There's no need to go all Lord of the Flies, Sam and Eric, and put them together to make some kind of funny point. But speaking of taking your wealth and making funny points, I want to look at the actual op-ed and some of the things that Coach said. The guy he flat out lied. He said within the last 10 years before I got involved in politics, running for president is being involved in politics. Although $50,000 compared to what they're worth is not a lot of money, Sean's totally right there. It's still $50,000 you gave. You were involved in politics. I'm not going to fault him for the fact that his brother gave tons of money before then, because he didn't say my brother wasn't involved. He said I wasn't. Do I think they probably collaborated on that? Of course, but that's speculation. That's not fact. That don't bring that to the argument. Coke Industries, however, and some of their subsidiaries did make donations before then, and so you can't divorce yourself from your own business. So that went well above $50,000. So again, he lied there. So thankfully, PolitiFact has done this legwork for us. We didn't have to fact check this article. They've already done it. The guy flat out lied, making his point. So I want to talk about some of the not lies that he told that are still just as stupid and just as much of an indictment. One, the idea that he talks about how collectivists are coming after him. The Koch family fortune was made not by these brothers, but by their father, who became filthy rich because of contracts he had with Joseph Stalin. The most the most collectivist government in the history of the world is what made these guys who they are today. So you're going to complain about collectivists coming after you. Well, you better thank actual collectivists, not people you're smearing, but an actual evil government that was a horrible, horrible thing. And everything you stand against, supposedly, is why you have the money to campaign against what you supposedly stand against. Such idiocy. And then there's the other thing here, and the only reason I bring this up as an indictment is because he brought it to the conversation. The quote here from his op-ed is, Coke companies employ 60,000 Americans who make many thousands of products that Americans want and need. According to government figures, our employees and the 143,000 additional American jobs they support generate nearly $11.7 billion in compensation and benefits. You know what? That's great. They created a lot of jobs, and in all honesty, for the amount of education that it probably takes to work most of these Koch brothers jobs, probably pretty decent paying jobs. But here's why that's, again, that is a good point. But whenever you bring it up and brag about it, you open the door to criticism. So you pay 147,000 people $11 billion. You're each worth 36 by yourself. Don't sit here and talk about what a great, am I not merciful? That's ridiculous. And 1/3 of their workers are in unions, they say. Wow, 1/3 of 143,000. That means you are actively working to keep the other 2/3 to create jobs in non-union territories. This is how out of touch they are. They can't even do their own PR without indicting themselves. Even when they're telling the truth, they still don't make themselves look favorable.
I kind of got the sense from this op-ed that he felt that he had to come out and write this. He goes, how dare Harry Reid and some people in the media kind of bring my name into this whole kind of corrupting money, politics kind of conversation that's now starting to bubble up in American society. Like, how dare, I'm going to have to defend myself. Look at all the good I do. And he gets people like Joe Scarborough kind of saying, look at all the money he spent on cancer research. And it's like, well, he's probably got a guilty conscience because I mean, as Jeff mentioned, some of the products, releasing carcinogenics environment.
No,
Like
he got cancer. That's when he started giving money to cancer, which again is a great thing. But he didn't do it before he got cancer.
yeah, I mean, for me, like neither of you or Sean will probably say it, but I really think the Koch brothers are quite evil guys. Just on a they're just super greedy. They just they have no idea of the concept of altruism. They just look after number one. They're kind of, I really do just think they're just not good guys. I understand, I fully accept that he didn't, give political money, until, a decade ago. That I can let slide. I agree with him on that point. But he's saying, oh no, I wasn't really involved in politics. Brilliant point by Jordan saying, well, if you ran for president, you're involved in politics. And he's saying, oh, I was involved in education. It's like, yeah, he was educating senators and other politicians, kind of saying, if you take my money, then you do as I say. I'm going to educate you on how the system is really going to work. That's his education. He's just a real, well, both of them are just real nasty guys. I can't stand either of them.
Well, I think they are driven by a little guilty conscience, but it's not about the money that they're spending in politics. Like Jordan brought up, that their family fortune comes from Joseph Stalin, and their father had a crisis of character, I guess, and
their father who helped found the John Birch Society while making money from Joseph Stalin,
and he started funding all these different groups back then, and they're carrying on that because they feel bad for that. But to me, even that's not that big of a deal to me, because I mean, IBM made the gas chambers, and I hate to bring the Nazis into this, but this is actually an apples to apples comparison. IBM made the gas chambers, and they made money off of selling that to the Nazis, and they put the Jews in there.
It's not an apples to apples comparison, Sean. I'm sorry to jump in, but IBM isn't writing op-eds complaining about fascists coming after them after they made their money from fascists. That's certainly an indictment against IBM.
I'm just saying,
but they're saying, you stupid collectivists, you want our money. You made your money because of those collectivists.
Yeah, but I'm saying you're what you call it. They're coming out against how they originally made their money. Hypocritical, obviously. Well, I mean, how their father made their money. But there are other companies that did horrible, horrible things, that made horrible products for horrible governments, that don't come out against that, and I don't see the big distinction there. But to the overall point, it's it's an op-ed. I don't think it's that interesting at all. It's basically him defending himself. Whether I hate when people say how many jobs they created. It's or how many charities they could donate to. I'm just let people find that out on their own. But or how much education they fund or any of that. To me, it's like when Ted Nugent goes out and he says, "You know how many dying kids I hang around?" No, just keep that to yourself. If you really care about that, then keep that to yourself.
All this op-ed is going to do is that the people who like the Koch brothers and like what they're doing to the political system, they're going to read this op-ed and think, no, this is good for them. They are actually really good guys, and it's just going to enhance their opinion of the Koch brothers. And people who already dislike the Koch brothers, and I strongly put myself in that camp, is just going to hate them even more. It's just a real kind of it's not going to kind of sway any people, I don't think, either way. It certainly shouldn't.
Do we have time, Sean, to maybe Jeff, to switch gears and talk about why Charles Koch feels so compelled to write this article? It's because, for once, even in the era of Citizens United, in the era of all this just corruption and everything, groups like Wolfpack and the Root Strikers fighting against, somebody had the cojones on the liberal side to stand up and speak truth to power. The right wing has been doing this for guys like George Soros and everything. They do it every time they open their mouth. But the left has always been so afraid to come after moneyed interest. And they're finally doing it, and these Koch brothers have built such a strong case against themselves, it's actually working, and they feel threatened, and people are starting to realize that elections are being bought, and that information is being manipulated with the intent to make profit off of ignorance, and everything else that these guys are a part of, and they're starting to stand against it. It's starting to get traction. And it's scaring them for the first time in a long time. They're scared.
Which goes to the point that the Koch brothers really aren't that smart at buying politicians, because you don't hear these guys speaking out against the banks that buy both sides of the like, it's easy to call out George Soros if you're a Republican because you don't get money from George Soros. It's easy for Harry Reid, even though it's taking the Democrats a while to take aim at them. It's pretty easy to call out Charles Koch if he's not, or David Koch, or both of them, if they're not giving you money.
You're not like West Virginia or a coal state where they have bought off Democrats.
Right.
But I'm saying, like, you typically, like, the people who call out that rich billionaire, it's like Republicans calling out Bloomberg. Like, that's because Bloomberg gives to gun control groups. Like, he don't give money to you.
Right. No, that's totally true. Yeah, when it comes to the bankers who give to both parties, that's A-okay, brother.